Hey everybody, I'm Matt from Primal Mobility. Today I'm going to be taking you through a guided beginner hip mobility routine that is going to help improve internal and external hip rotation as well as hip extension. Now I want to be cautious. I did say that this is a beginner hip mobility routine, but I don't want you to confuse beginner with easy. This should not feel easy. This is going to feel actually quite challenging, and as it should. Mobility training is another form of strength training. So as I guide you through this routine, pay attention to the cues and the scaling options that I'm suggesting to you, because some of the positions may be very challenging to get into depending on how much range of motion you currently have. Now, before we get started with today's routine, just hit that subscribe button. It helps me out a lot in making sure that I can come back and bring you more mobility routines like this. We're not going to need any equipment other than something soft, a soft surface for your knees. If you're not too concerned with that, then go for it. But I like to use a gym mat. You can use a pillow or a carpet or whatever, something soft to help protect the knees. Let's get after it. So this routine is going to have 2 different supersets for a total of 4 exercises. And we're going to do 2 sets of each superset. So it should be relatively quick and the hips should feel amazing after this. We're gonna start off in a classic 90-90 position for a 90-90 transition exercise. So this position, being upright in the 90-90, can be very challenging for a lot of people. Please feel free to lean right back as far as you feel like you need to in order to be able to get into the 90-90 position. If that is still too challenging, feel free to sit on something that elevates the hips, and that'll make it a lot easier. So from here, I'm just gonna start off by opening up the hips, just getting things moving. This is just a little basic warm-up so that we can make sure we get active through this movement. Just getting the hips moving here. Sorry for the angle, I'm sure that's very flattering, but let's stay focused on the movement here. So as we go through this, just about 60 seconds of just moving the hips through internal and external rotation, which is huge for just overall function of the hips. As we move the hips into flexion and extension, we actually need more internal and external rotation than most people realize. Hip flexion requires hip internal rotation. Hip extension requires hip external rotation. So now that we're slightly warmed up in the hips, we can start getting a little bit more active. So starting on the one side, we're gonna go for about 6 reps per side on this one. We're gonna start by driving the foot slightly into the floor here, gently, nothing too crazy, and actively pulling that hip up towards the ceiling and opening the hips up as much as you can, and then keeping that distance between the knees as you transition to the other side. Now do what you can to avoid rotating the torso too much. Try to keep that torso straight forward so that we can really train the hips through the movement. And we're gonna go to the other side there. So again, I like to lean back. I feel like I'm able to get more from my hips this way. And we're doing everything we can to avoid just kind of flopping back and forth. We wanna stay as active and controlled of those ranges of motion as we can. So that's 3 on this side. That's halfway. Just moving the hips through internal and external rotation with as much control as we can bring in here. Because at the end of the day, that's what mobility truly is. The ability to control our deep ranges of motion. So if we're just stretching through those ranges, then we are losing the opportunity to develop that control that will be very helpful for when we get into the gym or get into those ranges of motion in our everyday life. I think I may be going for 7 here, so just 1 more rep onto this side. Good. Okay, so that's internal and external rotation. Next, we're going to go directly into the eccentric hip flexor. So from here, I'm going to get into a tall kneeling position and make sure that my pelvis is tilted forward. So already I could feel a nice little stretch here. I don't want to feel like I'm having to lean forward and missing the stretch. I want to start here, tilt the pelvis and get a nice deep stretch and squeeze that glute. Now we're going to kick that back foot into the floor hard to help us engage the core and engage the quads and the hip flexor, we should already feel like a decent stretch here. Now, for a 3-second count, I'm going to drive forward to find that deepest stretch position. 2, 3, and pause at the end for 1 second. 1, and then we come back to starting position. So each rep, we gotta try and sink a little bit deeper into that stretch. We're gonna do a total of 5 reps. So again, kicking the back foot hard down into the floor, tilt the pelvis, chest nice and high. 1, 2, 3, hold for a count of 1, and come back. It gets spicy. Again, 1, 2, 3, hold for a count of 1, 1, 2, 3, aiming to get a little bit deeper each rep. 1, 2, 3, still squeezing that glute while we're in that deep stretch position. Don't let go of that glute squeeze. We want to keep it, and if anything, while we're in that deepest stretch, we're gonna squeeze even harder. Okay, and now we will do the other side. So again, making sure that we're not extending through the low back, we're going to tilt the pelvis. Tilt the pelvis and squeeze the glute, okay? It's like you're holding in a fart. And from here, we're going to lean in, 2, 3, and hold for that 1 second count. Again, as we're going, we're keeping that kick into the floor and keeping that glute squeeze at the same time. It should be active. Again, simple, but not easy. That's 3, 2 more. 1, 2, 3. Last one here. 1, 2, 3. Find that deepest stretch position. Squeeze the glute, kick into the floor, hold for 1 second, and come out of it. So that should warm up the hip flexors very nice, and right now they may be burning a little bit. It's okay, shake them out. We're gonna rest for about 30 seconds. And next, we're gonna get a little bit more active with our 90-90 transition. So the first one was a little bit calmer. This time, we're really gonna try and engage those hips to make sure that we're really controlling internal and external rotation. So just shake the hips out for a second, and then we're gonna get right into it. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter which side you plan to start on. I'm gonna start with my left leg forward. I'm gonna lean back slightly because again, I feel like that helps me. And again, if you need to scale this position, if you need to regress it in whatever way, put something under your butt. Maybe it's a bumper plate, maybe it's a pillow, maybe it's anything. Anything that elevates the hips a little bit will help reduce the amount of rotation required from the hips and make this position a lot easier to get into. I'm gonna lean back. You can lean back as much as you feel like you need to. And now from here, driving that foot down into the floor, keeping our torso as straight as we possibly can, belly button forward, driving the foot down into the floor, pull that leg up while this leg stays down, find that maximum distance between the knees, and keep that distance as you transition. And from here, once that leg hits the floor, pull slowly into internal rotation without rotating the torso. Keep that belly button facing forward. And go back to the other side to complete our first rep. So you'll notice that some on my left side, I'm not able to touch the floor, and that's because I'm lacking a bit more internal rotation on that side. So here I'm pulling, aiming to get that foot or that knee down to the floor for a nice deep stretch, and I'm active, pressing my feet down into the floor as I'm rotating. Now I've lost count, that may be 2 or 3. I'm gonna say that's 2. We just gained ourselves an extra rep, my friends, because I am too focused on trying to speak to you. Stay active. You wanna feel like the glutes are firing. You wanna squeeze the hips as you rotate. That's 3, we're halfway. Push hard, push hard. You want this active. We're only doing 2 sets, so this is the last one. We want the hips to wake up and feel like what we're doing right now is actually helpful. Don't just move passively, stay active. Back and forth. Do yourself a favor and get some nice little pauses down here as you're pulling that hip into internal rotation. And last rep. Again, sorry for the funky angle. Excellent. Oh, that feels spicy, but it feels good. All right, so right immediately into the eccentric hip flexor, getting into that nice tall kneeling position, immediately kicking that back foot into the floor hard, pulling that pelvis into a posterior tilt to get a nice squeeze in the glutes and straighten out that low back. Tall posture, kicking and leaning in. 1, 2, 3. Hold for that pause at the bottom. We want to make sure that we're getting a good, deeper stretch this set than we did the first set. 1, 2, 3. Remember, it's not about the distance that you get, it's about the intensity, the intention, and the stretch that you're feeling, the active stretch. 3, 2 more. Leaning in, getting that deep stretch. 4, last one. Let's go for the deepest position. Last one, best one. Hold it. 2, 3, squeeze, kick into the floor. Woo. Oh yeah, spicy, spicy, spicy. Shake it out. Give yourself a second there. That might get real spicy on the hips, which is totally fine. And then getting into the other side. So as I said, simple but not easy. All right, getting into it, tilting the pelvis, boom, already finding a stretch potentially. We're already opened up from our first set, so maybe not. Kick into the floor and lean into the stretch. 2, 1, and pause. 1. Keep that pause very active. 1, 2, 3. 3 more. 2, 3. 2 left. 1, 2, 3. Last one, best one, let's go. Leaning in, 2, 3, find that deepest position, kick into the floor, squeeze the glute, and come out of it. Whew. All right, a nice little 30-second rest. Let the hips calm down a little bit from here. Next, we're gonna get into more internal rotation for the hips. Active internal rotation in particular. We're gonna do some internal rotation lift-offs. And again, I'll show you how you can scale that if you need to. And then we are going to get into some very active hip flexor work, similar to what we just did, but a little bit more active than that, if you can imagine. So again, we want to keep this beginner, but beginner does not mean easy, right? So scale it back to whatever you feel is effective and also manageable for you. Very, very important. So again, we're gonna start by getting into, so that's the 2 sets of the first superset. Now we're moving into our second superset. Again, 2 sets. So what we're gonna do here is we are going to be in the 90-90 position, similar to what we were doing before. We're gonna try to avoid leaning away. This time we want to lean in as much as possible. So if you're finding that, again, this position is challenging, you can easily scale the position once again by elevating the hips. That will reduce the amount of internal rotation that your hips need to get into this position. So we wanna lean forward, lean as far forward as you can, and if you need to, it's totally fine to just bring that foot here. That's okay, we're not focused on that front hip nearly as much, but if you can, keep it out. It'll challenge the front hip a little bit more. Leaning in. Now from here, we're gonna be doing lift-offs on our back leg here, training the muscles responsible for internal rotation. So this first set, both sets actually, we're gonna be doing 5 reps with a count of 1 second at the top, a nice 1 second pause. Now I wanna be clear here that if you don't get any lift off whatsoever, that does not matter. That is not important. The range of motion is not important. What is important is the intention. So we wanna make sure that you are feeling the muscles responsible for that action. We wanna make sure that you're engaging the hips to do it, even if it's not happening, okay? So again, we're gonna lean in. From here, I'm gonna slightly, gently drive my knee down into the floor just to make sure that I'm really engaging the hips. And I'm going to pull as high as I can, squeezing the hips to get into that position and hold for a count of 1, and then come back down. That is 1 rep. We're gonna do 5 per side with that 1 second hold. So let's restart here. If you've already gotten started, you can join me on the second rep, but I'm gonna go for 5 starting now. Lift off. 1. We wanna get a nice contraction, almost like you're at the top of a bicep curl. 2. 3. If you feel like you're cramping up in your core here, you can lean a little bit further away. That's totally fine. We don't want to be hiking at the hip. You want to just really be rotating. 4. Last one. 5. Whew. All right, and now we're going to go into the other side. So again, if you need to, elevate your hips, please. And you can always bring that foot back if that's easier. And lean away. Don't be afraid to lean away. You're gonna find that you're able to get more comfort in the hips, and it's going to help you find a position where you can actually get active in. So don't try to be a hero. Don't try to get into this position and do your lift offs. I can't even lift off from here. Not happening. Just find the position where you can get most active. Okay, here we go. Lifting off and 1 second count. 1. 5 reps. 2. 3. If you feel like you might cramp in the hips, that is totally normal. Don't freak out from that. You can just always lean away, shake it out, and get right back into it. 4. 1 more. 5. Whew. Spicy. The hips might cramp on that, which is totally fine, as I said. All right, so next we're gonna be doing what I call a front split lift off, but it could also be like a deep lunge lift off. Similar concept here. We are going to get into a wide, deep lunge stance, okay? We wanna get like a nice deep lunge stance where the heel is just slightly in front of the knee position. So I'm not here, slightly forward, and then I'm leaning into it a little bit, okay? Now from here, what I'm going to do is drive that back leg or that back foot down into the floor, and then I'm going to pull this knee straight. So it's gonna look something like this. Okay, I'm engaging the glute, pulling that knee into a straight position, stretching out the hip flexors in a very active and strengthening way. Now this is a very challenging exercise, so if you feel like you need to be up here in order to do it, totally fine. But I want you to aim to have as little elevation on your torso as possible. So if you can stay down here, even better. But if you need to come way up, that's totally fine. Again, start with where you're at and we build and progress from there. So, maintaining that very active position, we're gonna go for 5 reps per side with that 1 second hold. Very challenging, very active. Ready? Up, extend, squeeze the glute, hold, and drop. Let's go again, 4 more. 1, and drop. If you need support to hold on to something for your balance, please do it. Hold on to the arm of a couch, the squat rack, even have a PVC pipe in your hand. 1, 2 more. Extend. 1. Really using the glutes to pull your hip into extension. And last rep. Woo! Spicy. You're gonna hear me saying that a lot. A lot. It's spicy. I don't know if you've ever eaten anything spicy, but it basically feels like that on the hips right now. All right, ready? So now we're going into that other side. I'm going into my left hip as the working hip right now. And extend, count of 1, and drop. Remember to really squeeze those glutes. Use the glutes to pull your hip into extension and drop. That's 2, 3 more. As little elevation as you can, but as much as you need to get the right intention. Ooh, 1 more. Okay. Okay, we're gonna give a 30-second rest. Take 60 seconds if you feel like you need to. Just pause the video. Honestly, rest as much as you feel like you need to right now, but make sure that you're getting back into it with a little bit of fatigue in the hips. We want the hips to be working through that fatigue so that we can build and influence adaptation, so that we can actually build strength within the hips in those deep ranges of motion. This is strength-based mobility training, my friends. No equipment needed, just space and intensity. You gotta have the guts to put in some intensity here. All right, so getting into the next set of the lift-offs in our 90-90 position, leaning forward. 1, 2, and drop. Actually, I said 1 second count. 1. It's a long second, isn't it? This should feel like a stronger engagement this time now that our hips are prepared for it. 2 more reps. Lift. 1 more. Squeeze the hips. Ooh. Woo. All right. Other side here. Okay. Last rep or last set for this one, guys. So make sure that you are active. Leave it all on the table. Let your hips know that you're putting in work here. Don't lazy out on it. Let's work hard. So again, if you need to, elevate the hips as much as you can. Find those positions that feel good for you and that you can work from. Ready? Lift. 1. Oh, this side is ready to cramp on me. 2. I might cramp. We'll see. 3 left. 3. I'm gonna cramp right in this position. 4. Oh, no, the cramp's going away. All right, last one. Ready? Big lift off, big contraction. 5. Oh, baby. Okay. Directly, immediately into the front split lift-offs, the deep lunge lift-offs. We're gonna get 5 reps per side and that 1 second count. Ready? So up, hold, squeeze hard. 1, 2, 3. You may even feel like the stretch is starting to creep up into the stomach area. That's fine. It's the hip flexors putting in work. 4. Keep that chest up, look forward. 5. Woo-hoo-hoo. Holy smokes. I don't know if you guys are feeling this, but damn, I'm putting in work. I got heavy squats later today, so this is honestly perfect for me. Ready, guys? From here, up. 1, 2. Oh, that side feels good. 3. Don't hesitate to hold on to your knee again or anything for support. 4. Last one. Try to get that deepest stretch position and work from there. 5. Squeeze. Ooh. Woo! Holy moly. All right. So guys, that may have not felt like a beginner hip mobility routine. And that's kind of the point. We don't want it to feel super easy. We want this to feel challenging. So I hope this was valuable for you. I hope that your hips feel amazing after this, and I hope to catch you on the next one. If you saw value in this, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and that way you can join us on the next mobility routine. Let's go.